So under my video with Dragon Ball Super and Boruto's art, I had an interesting comment from the Black Otaku. He made a point about why do series feel the need to have a sequel series when there is already a semi-decent to good conclusion already established. And this topic isn't really exclusive to anime or manga. In reality, this goes towards almost everything in media. The revival of sitcoms that ended 20 plus years ago, the video game sequel that comes in and sort of ruins the charm of the first, the sequel to a movie that no one asked for, and so on and so on. Now, to be completely honest, we all know the real answer is money. Companies aren't going to pour money into an idea unless they're sure they're going to make some type of return on their investment. But the sad truth is that in most cases, the continuation of a series that didn't really need one ultimately brings about more harm than good. And I want to explore a couple series that I feel should have ended where they were at and shouldn't have expanded any further. Number 1, Star Wars. Oh yeah, I'm going there. Brief summary of Star Wars: galactic turmoil, war, space niggas that are wizards, space Detroit. I think y'all get the picture. Now, when I mean Star Wars, I want you to get into the headspace from 1983, where Return of the Jedi came out, Darth Vader had been redeemed, the Galactic Empire had been terminated, the Emperor was defeated.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
And the good guys celebrate in a party, dancing around the decapitated heads of their ops, therein marking the end of the trilogy. Or so we thought, because George was still in the kitchen cooking. But in the rare case of Star Wars, it actually had two forms of continuations, one being the prequels and the other being the sequels. Now, much like many movie trilogies, you have a good first one, the second one that raises the stakes, and the third one that doesn't quite stick the landing, but it does just good enough to make you feel satisfied. That's the OG trilogy of Star Wars. Now, I do want to mention that it's on record of George coming out and saying he had this huge saga planned out from the start that wouldn't fit into just 3 movies, but it doesn't really negate the issue here. Did Star Wars need more than 3 movies? To be completely honest, I don't think it did. I, for one, love Revenge of the Sith. It's my favorite out of the 9 films. But Star Wars could have just been these 3 and it would have been fine. Also want to note that in no way could the people back then have had the foresight of the very divisive films that would come out. But here in 2024, we all know the damage these additional 6 films did to the classic space opera. From story beats not making sense or just flat out lazy, to being too flashy for its own good and coming out kind of tacky. The effects these movies have had almost overshadows the whole theme of Star Wars as a whole, and that's a damn shame. Number 2, The Last of Us Part 2. Quite possibly the biggest example of leave well enough alone in the history of gaming. In 2013, when The Last of Us 1 came out, not to be confused with The Last of Us Remastered or The Last of Us Part 1, which is a remake of the remaster. When it came out, if you didn't have a PS3, you were missing out. And I fit into that party, as I made the mistake of telling my mom that I wanted an Xbox 360 when I was 6 years old, not understanding what lies ahead, and that every one of your actions leads to a consequence. Anyways, The Last of Us was so impactful that it basically became the face of PlayStation when people brought up exclusives, the gameplay, the wonderfully crafted story, the multiplayer. This game had it all. Throughout the years, many people speculated on whether or not if The Last of Us should even have a sequel. It was such a widespread topic in the community, even my friends and myself included got into a couple debates about it. And all that came to a rest when the trailer dropped for the sequel, and for the most part, it looked like everything we could have ever wanted: improved graphics, new game mechanics, and we were sure the story was going to be just as good as the first one, right? Right? Look, I'm not here to tell you whether or not The Last of Us 2 is a good game narratively or not, but I will say that the controversy surrounding it is without a doubt the main topic when this game is mentioned. No one even really talks about anything else the game gets right. It's just the controversial pieces. The slander was so big that the first game started receiving strays as well. It's leading into a bigger snowball effect that I deem the turn on Naughty Dog. Now lastly, number 3, Dragon Ball. So before I even dive into this one, rest in peace Akira Toriyama. Your love and passion for your work has impacted not just the manga landscape, but the world as a whole. Dragon Ball is a household name whose influence can be seen and felt everywhere, and there are no words to describe how grateful we are to you for introducing us to our favorite martial artists. You will be missed, and never forgotten. So after 500 chapters of non-stop action and adventure, it was finally time for us to say goodbye to the world we grew to love. Goku was now off to train a new pupil, and the world very much seemed at peace since the events of the Buu saga. The perfect conclusion. Or so we thought. Now, Dragon Ball, much like Star Wars, has two continuations. One being Dragon Ball GT, and the more recent one being Dragon Ball Super, and the reception of both were pretty negative. See, the ending of Dragon Ball Z had a real charm to it. The rest of the stories after the ending were left up to your imagination as the reader. They left Goku in a spot where he could potentially come back, but all in all, it was really up to your imagination to fill in the gaps. But boy, the studios run with that thought. Because GT being an anime exclusive launched just as fast as the anime ended, and its reception was bad because the last thing they envisioned as a continuation for Goku was becoming a kid again, and reasonably so. Then with Dragon Ball Super supposedly all taking place before the final days of Z, it completely ruined the continuity. There's no way you can explain the crazy power-ups and adventures in Super and mesh it into the end of Z. It just doesn't seem plausible right now, which in turn hurts the previous series. And don't even get me started on the character assassinations that plague Super. From Goku not maintaining his mature mindset he got all the way back from the Cell Saga, to Vegeta regressing his thoughts on Goku during his fight with Majin Buu. Hell, even Gohan constantly flip-flops in this continuation more than once, and it's all over the place, especially if you're reading the manga version of Gohan and the anime version of Gohan. It's completely out of whack. What I will give GT is that the ending had a type of finality to it that was missing from Super. But that's about it. The final chapters of Dragon Ball served just fine and was a very well done conclusion that didn't need to be continued. So like I said at the beginning, all this stems from corporate wanting more money, or the creators not necessarily knowing how to execute a good follow-up, or hell, even the creator biting on a bit more than they can really chew. Not everything needs to be an expanded story. We don't need to know what the pretenses are, or what follows after we get through our initial story. Because if we don't know when to lay off the keyboard and start writing down new ideas to expand our works, can we really ever appreciate and enjoy what was right in front of us?